Welcome to Civil War 2024 film review. I might be a bit late to this, however, I think this was one of my top films, I would actually say, from last year. I have my reasons, and I think it was kind of a hard decision to try and pick what film I enjoyed most of last year. I personally would say there probably wasn't that many good films to pick from, but this film, I think, really did exceed my expectations, I think, from what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting this film to be honest, be that good. I thought I knew I would enjoy it, I think, unless it was absolutely, utterly terrible. But, it didn't. In fact, I kind of went in thinking this is probably going to be a cheap action film, where actually I think the story that was told was way stronger there, and the message was not your usual message, I suppose, as you would expect. I kind of thought it would tell the obvious differences between right and wrong, and actually it didn't. In fact, I would actually almost say it was the opposite. It didn't tell anything about what was right and wrong. It actually left those political affiliations aside, and it left those moral right and wrong decisions aside as well. It didn't give you the, which side was correct, what started this. It left a lot of questions unanswered, but I think it answered a lot of the important questions, and I think the director did a really good job at looking at, well, this is what people think's important in warfare, of what side is right and what side is wrong, where actually we should be asking ourselves, other questions, but we'll get into that a bit more later on. But yeah, I think that's kind of my little summary, I suppose, of the film. Obviously, there is going to be spoilers. I will be mentioning scenes and saying the ending to the film. So if you haven't seen the film, I do say to go and watch it. I believe it's on Amazon at the moment for anyone who has an Amazon subscription. So go and watch it there. I highly recommend it, especially if you're quite into action films anyway. But this film kind of follows a journalist who's in the warfare, and doesn't really, they're just kind of seeing things from an outer perspective. They're not really, I suppose, in the depths of the warfare. They are in a sense, but they're not, they're not the ones firing a gun. They're not the ones, they've never killed anybody before. They've just seen a lot. So yeah, I highly urge to go and watch it before listening to this review. If you are listening to the review, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. But let's get on with the film review. So let's go on to the plot overview first. The film follows Lee, who is embedded with a group of soldiers, and they cover a divisive and violent civil war. As the government and rebel factions clash, Lee's personal journey unfolds alongside the political turmoil. She's joined by Jesse, a younger reporter, whose idealism and detachment from the war are in stark contrast to Lee's jaded outlook as they traverse battlefields and witness firsthand the horrors of the conflict. The film delves into themes of morality, loyalty, and the emotional toll of war. In the end, even after the death of the president, the supposed antagonist, Lee's disillusionment, remains. And the film underscores the cyclical nature of warfare. No matter who wins, someone will always lose. The main cast for this film is Kirsten Dunst, playing Lee, Wagner Moura, playing Joel, Kaylee Spaney, playing Jesse, Stephen Henderson, playing Sammy, and Nick Offerman as the president. Alex Garland directed this film, and this film was produced by A24. So let's go into the themes and analysis so far of the film. So I think one of the film's central themes is moral ambiguity of war. I think that hits pretty hard, pretty solid into the film throughout. I think Lee over time grows more detached as she recognises that the conflict she's witnessing might have been inevitable. She no longer questions who is right or wrong, but instead focuses on the consequences of war. And this is highlighted in a key moment when Lee calmly watches the violence unfold. I think in the scene where the WF take out the American government soldiers in the building, I think, where one of the soldiers gets shot. Jesse's kind of taking a lot of photos, and Lee's just kind of seems to just be taking it all in, really. And I think while Jessie, driven by her role as a reporter, continues to view the situation with a detached lens, eager to capture the perfect shot. The film also addresses deeper personal conflicts, particularly between Lee and Jessie. Lee's emotional evolution contrasts with Jessie's growing cynicism, and though I would say the progression of their arcs is somewhat predictable, I don't think it detracts from the richness of their characters. This dynamic explores the idea that war not only changes the political landscape, but also the individuals caught in its midst. I think that's what I would say I enjoyed most about the film. I think it was the moral ambiguity. Like, I guess I went in thinking, there's gonna, that I suppose the rebels are, basically like a Star Wars film, I suppose. Like, the rebels are the underdogs. They're looking to take out the bigger evil sort of at play and reclaim order. Where it didn't really show that, and it certainly, I wouldn't say, told that message, even from the main character's point of view. I think Sammy even says, like, one of the lines in the hotel right at the beginning of the film, I think he says something along the lines of, like, someone will win or someone will take over, and then someone else will be upset and unhappy, and the same cycle will repeat. And I think that's very prevalent. I feel like kind of how the real world conflicts occur. Conflicts never almost seem ending sometimes, like, which is quite sad, but they just seem to find themselves sort of in a cycle once warfare begins. And I guess maybe it's because the generation below just that's all they know. They don't know about how to talk things out and how to compromise things. It's just once the warfare begins, it's really hard to come out of that cycle, I think. And I think the film kind of shows that, and it doesn't point to who's in the right and who's in the wrong. And I think it did a very good. I think it was a smart thing to do that. As much as I would love to, I think, know more, I suppose that's the good thing about it. It's intrigued me. It's kind of made me go, well, I want more information. Like, I want to see more. I want to see things from a soldier's point of view on the WF, and I want to see a soldier's point of view in the government. How are things? But I think that's human nature to look for that answer of, to who is right and wrong. And I think we can assume, who is right and wrong. Likely, I think the president is really the antagonist of the film. I think even if you Google the film, I think it comes up with, the president is the antagonist. But there isn't really a clear antagonist, I would say, in this film. Just because I would say the president is the more likely person to be the antagonist, that doesn't mean to me that he's the antagonist. I think the antagonist is not a physical thing. I think we'll kind of go into a bit more, I think, about where we talk about the symbolism of the film, but I don't think there is a baddie or a villain necessarily. The villain depends on what side you're on. The villain depends on, not even what side you're on, but where you're situated. For example, when they go into the town that looks like it's completely unaffected, and where the main characters are like, God, it's like I've gone back in time. It's kind of like, whoa, what's happened? Where their villain is just anybody who attacks. And I think there's another great point, which I'll talk a little bit more, but where Lee just kind of goes on the ground and focuses more on the nature, it's a scene where the two soldiers are sniping each other, where one guy's in the building trying to snipe and then the other soldiers are on the floor. I think one of the soldiers says, look, like, I don't care who they are. I don't care if they're. I don't even think the soldiers really cared if they were on their side. I think they just said, look, do you not get it? Like, I think to one of the main cast, and they said, like, they're shooting, so we're shooting. Like, it doesn't matter who they are. That's the villain. That's the enemy at the moment. And that's the thing. I think that's it. I lost my point. I lost my point. I lost my trail of thought. That's the enemy. The enemy is the person who's ever shooting at me, right? Like, the journalist, I am sure the journalists, the main cast, have seen both sides and been on close to both sides of the conflict. I think we follow the WF a lot of the time, but I think they've seen both sides. And then all of a sudden, later in the film, spoiler, but they meet an American soldier and American government soldier, I believe, and he becomes a threat to them. He's probably likely going to kill them. He's already shot, spoilers, shot 2 of their friends and killed a whole village, So, that's what I mean by, I think, the villain is whoever is in the moment. And I think, there isn't a overall villain that anyone's really working towards. Obviously, apart from the WF, towards the American president and the American government soldiers who are attacking the WF. So, yeah. But I think that kind of covers a little bit of my view and the themes and the analysis. And I think that's why I really like this film. It really averted my expectation of what I thought this film was going to be. I thought it was going to be a very simple, basic message in this film, and that was not the case. It really, and to be honest, I'll talk about my criticism of the film kind of I suppose at the end of the video. But yeah. But I think that's something that I really liked about this film. I liked that it didn't answer all our questions, and I liked that it didn't give us a very clear picture. It just gave us our same point of view as what the journalists are seeing through this film. So let's talk about the cinematic choices and the symbolism. So the film's cinematography, I think, uses very striking imagery to convey its themes. One example that I think I really loved is there's a scene where Lee is in the midst of the sniper battle and lays down and focuses on the flowers growing nearby. The contrast between the brutal violence of the conflict and the fragile beauty of nature serves as a visual metaphor for the disconnect that Lee feels compared to what Jessie feels. Lee has become increasingly numb to the warfare around her, finding solace in something untouched by the conflict. And I think that there's a lot of examples where that goes, really. I think, even the scene where the WF get the bags on the heads of the soldiers that they capture in the building, and I'm going to assume because they probably ran out of ammo, maybe, and Jessie goes to take a photo of them, where Lee is quite happy just being in her own space and looking kind of at the, I suppose, of just... I guess I'm not really quite remember what she's looking at. I think she's looking at the sky or she's looking where there's peace. She's not looking towards the gunfire and the warfare. And yeah, and I think being on home territory, I think that's what hits harder for her a bit more. Where I think Jessie is a bit young, so she's not. This is all she knows. She's probably grown up. And, her memories kind of are just warfare. This is just normal for her to be on her own turf. Where, now, Lee has gone to other countries. She's distanced herself from home. She's been able to come back home and be like, cool, this is home, this is peace. Where, I would say, Lee's been able to go to another country and been able to detached from the people she's met there. She'll be going there for maybe a year or maybe even a couple of years, or maybe even a few months even, and she'll be able to detach from the people she knows there. But these are people, she's in America, she was raised up in America, she, I think, comes to back home and thinks of, untouched by a place that's untouched by warfare, where now she doesn't have that, and she's trying to find things in the moment to try and find solace that what once used to be, and I think, and it used to be really kind of confused me at the beginning when I first watched the film in cinema, because Sammy, when they go to the town that's not really been touched by warfare, and then Sammy notices the soldiers up on the buildings with guns. Sammy passes the cigarette to her and says, well, we would have got bored anyway. And I was kind of like, oh. I was like, why does he say that? Because to me, I was kind of like, aren't they going though to the president? Aren't they kind of trying to get there? to me, when Sammy said that, I was kind of like, that to me sounds as though he's trying to settle down. Like, I was like, or not settle down, but like trying to find a place that hasn't been touched by warfare, that hasn't, that's kind of had a bit of a break. And I was like, why do you want to break? I was like, I thought that's not your goal, But then it kind of hit me the second time when I watched it, because I was like, oh, as I said, this is a country and a place where they've lost that. They can't go back somewhere or anywhere, they can't go back home and find peace. They can't go back home and find peace, and solace where they once knew. This is it, And I think for them, that's why the older characters, it hits a bit harder, because it's like, this is where they could go to have a break. And I think they find this town and they're like, wow, this is actually this feels like home. And then they see the soldiers on top of the buildings and they're like, oh, nope, the warfare is here. It's just concealed, or it's people just pretend to not be affected by it, and they don't want to pretend to not be affected by it. Because I think from their experiences, they find that hard to do. So let's talk about the critical reception that this film got when it released. Civil War has received a mixed to positive critical reception. Some critics have praised its willingness to tackle complex themes of moral ambiguity and the emotional toll of war. The ambiguity of the conflict, which left many viewers yearning for clearer moral boundaries, was cited as a point of contention. Though others saw it as a deliberate narrative choice that made the film more thought-provoking, the performances, particularly from the lead actors, were widely praised, though some found the pacing and predictable character arcs to be drawbacks. Ultimately, the film succeeds in challenging its audience to rethink the nature of warfare and its personal impact, even if it does not provide clear answers. I would say that's a fair summary, I think, of the critical reception that the film got. I would say some of my personal critiques of the film. I don't really mind that it's predictable. That doesn't really bother me. I think one of my critics is actually not to do with the film itself, but more of the marketing and the trailer of the film. I went in thinking this is going to be a very, action-based film, and, it's going to have a very, your standard basic message, just warfare in America, really. I think that's kind of what I saw, and I thought it'd be quite flashy of it. It was not like that at all. It was quite a raw film, a raw film of warfare, and I thought, it was definitely more of a character film, and I definitely don't think I really felt that in the trailer. In the trailers it kind of felt very much like go, 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 chaos everywhere, where it had a lot of downtime, had a lot of moments where it was, where the characters were just talking and connecting, and then it quickly went into moments of chaos where there was shooting going on, and it was like, whoa, okay, we're in this, And I think that's kind of how I would say real warfare is. Sometimes you don't always expect, and you're not always ready for there to be, and you just have to be. You're always alert. And I think it translated that very well. And I think, so it's not really a negative so much on the film, more of the marketing and the trailers, because for me, that's great. I love a character film. That's great for me. I thought it was brilliant. Where I think for someone, someone who is looking for action, and looking for, looking for that kind of film, I think, I don't, I think, when they go in and find it, oh, it's a character film, they're kind of like, oh, that's not what I expected, and I think they kind of miss, oh, I was kind of hoping there'd be more action, So I think that's probably one of my criticisms of the film. I think the cinematography is great. I think the acting is great. I think the main cast did a brilliant job. I think the editing and the the style and of the film, I thought it was quite stylized. Like the photography moments where, there'd be a photo and a camera and then it would freeze frame and there'd be this complete silence of that picture. I thought that was great. I love that. It was like a moment of it was like a moment of war. How to say? I'm trying to find the words really to say it, but really it captured a perfect moment of war, I suppose, and it was great. Yeah, I thought it was a really, really great I thought it was really great stylized in that way, and I like that he used the black and white, I guess, when it showed the photos. I don't know why, something about taking the colour out of the photo really made it, made it very clear of the image that you were looking at, It also kind of took away of the niceness, like, of what was kind of going on. Like, I think visually, the action scenes look really good. And then when it showed the picture and it showed the black and white, it was kind of like, oh, it suddenly became really gritty, and really became a bit more real, I guess, and I think that made it much more impactful. I really like that. But yeah, so I think that's kind of my review, really. Going on to the conclusion. Da-da-da. I would say Civil War 2024, not to be confused with Avengers Civil War, is a powerful, thought-provoking exploration of the complexities of war and the emotional toll it takes on those who live through it. While its narrative may not give audiences all the answers they expect, it's the thematic richness and cinematic beauty that make it a film worth watching, especially for those who appreciate stories that don't shy away from moral ambiguity and the harsh realities of conflict. Thank you very much for listening to this review of Civil War. If you haven't seen it and this has kind of made you want to watch it, then I'm very pleased. I definitely urge to go and watch it, and I hope you don't mind spoilers. I did kind of give a spoiler warning. And if you have seen a film and liked my review, then please let me know in the comments below. And if you didn't like the review, if you didn't like my point and you thought this was an awful film, or if you thought very differently, that perhaps maybe it wasn't as morally ambiguous, or perhaps you didn't like the cinematography, or perhaps you like something that I didn't mention, then please also put that in the comments below. Thank you very much for listening, and hopefully see you next time on my next film review. Bye bye.